Vino Lion Media presents Business First.
Hi all, and welcome to a new episode of Business First with Sonia Aline. I am your host, and today we're happy to welcome Marcia Melendez, who is a real estate expert and serial entrepreneur. Welcome, Marcia. How are you?
Thank you so much for inviting me here this afternoon, Sonia. I'm doing great.
That's great. Yeah, so one of the things I'd like to ask, because I saw in your background, you've done a number of different things in terms of your entrepreneurial expertise. Is there a difference? And scholastically or in the books, they would say, yes, there's a difference. But I'm always curious how business owners and entrepreneurs feel. Is there really a difference between an entrepreneur and a business owner?
Sometimes the labels are used interchangeably, but I think there's a difference. I think an entrepreneur is one that sees opportunities wherever they go. You know, I always say entrepreneurs, we are the modern day cowboy. We see opportunities that no other person sees and we go after them. You know, we forge new paths and we develop new strategies. That's basically an entrepreneur. A business owner is more of a manager. It's more of a rounded person that you might start. For instance, I was an entrepreneur, but at one point with my business, my husband and I became a business owner. Because when you're a business owner, you have other commitments. You know, it's not just yourself. You have to think about your staff, your company, your customers. Whereas entrepreneurs, they're just interested in developing the next great idea or chasing the next great idea.
Well, yeah, okay. I think I'm an entrepreneur then, because or at least I like the idea of being an entrepreneur. How would you classify yourself? It seems like you've been both.
I'm an entrepreneur. It's interesting because even though my husband and I, we owned a business for 35 years, and we were successful business owners. We made a lot of money and we had a lot of accolades in the community. But deep down at heart, I think I'm an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because when I started the business, I did it kind of cold. You know, I didn't have a passion for flowers and land. I mean, I always loved gardening, but I kind of said, okay, I want to start a business. What business am I going to start? With business owners, you know, they're really more.
Is it more practical?
I don't know how to put it.
That they know.
That's a great word.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a way to put it. They're more practical. With entrepreneurs, we don't know if it's going to work until we start.
Right.
And a lot of times we try to freeze it, fix it, make it work. And I think one of the big differences between business owners and entrepreneurs is that once an entrepreneur gets something up, they're ready to go on to the next thing.
Right.
And for a long time, I had a problem with that. You know, after I had established my business and we were making money, I was like, okay, next. But I always had my real estate development going on. So I was always able to get that next fix through the next real estate project.
Right. You know, I would imagine that real estate would actually be a really good place for an entrepreneur because they're new properties, they're new areas, there's new development. Exactly. So I hadn't thought about it until just now. Yeah, so that would make sense. But tell us a little bit about the floral business. Because what was it that made you want to start a florist shop in Brooklyn, right? Was it in Brooklyn?
Yeah, being an entrepreneur. You're right. Well, I was an entrepreneur and I really wanted to start a business. You know, my mother was an entrepreneur all her life. I grew up watching my mother making money and supporting the family from entrepreneurship. My father, too, on a smaller scale, he was a bus driver for the city for years and years and years, and he dabbled here and there. But my mother actually supported herself by being an entrepreneur. And that was a great influence. So how I started the flower shop, I was just looking for some kind of business to start. And I had an idea, this was back in the 80s, I had an idea of selling flowers, not in your typical flower shop. I was really intimidated to go into a flower shop. And my whole idea was to make flowers inviting and accessible to everybody. So that was my idea when I started the flower shop. And, you know, we weren't going to do funerals. We weren't going to do weddings. We weren't going to do this. We weren't going to do that. That was my entrepreneur speaking. And the business person kicked in once I had rent to pay and employees to pay. I had rent and staff to pay every week. And then the business owner kicked in. Oh, how do I grow this business? How do I market this business? You know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Wow.
And that's how that basically grew. And we actually, from the flower business, we actually developed another facet of the business, which was landscape construction. So we were a florist and landscape contractor because once I had all these expenses, I realized I needed more money. You know, also, when you come out of corporate America and you start a business, your idea tends to be different to somebody a lot of immigrants start businesses because they feel they don't have the education or they're not good at the language, et cetera, et cetera. I basically started entrepreneurship because that's what I saw my mother doing, even though I had gone to college and gotten a fabulous job. And the landscape business, how that developed was I was just looking for a way to make more money.
Wow.
And
right. Was that a huge learning curve for you? It must have been.
What, the landscape?
The landscaping, but even the floral business, because I would imagine you have to know. There's one thing to like flowers, right, or to like that, the arrangements or what you could, offer someone who's a customer. But it's another thing to really understand, know the flowers, understand how they should be treated, cared for, and all of those things. Or was that easy for you?
It came easy for me. I think everything is a learning curve. And first thing, if you love something, it's easier to understand it because you want to learn and you want to embrace it. If you don't have an interest, then everything becomes difficult. But once you like something, everything is easier. I grew up with flowers and plants all my life. So even though that was not my goal when I was a youngster, we always had a yard. We always grew flowers. I grew up in London and flowers there were a big thing. Gardening is a big thing. So it was something that came naturally to me. Wow. It wasn't something that I had to, do a huge learning curve to embrace.
So how is it that you transitioned from making flower arrangements and landscaping to real estate?
That's an interesting question. I've always been a real estate investor.
Okay.
So I didn't really transition. I bought my first home when I was 27. My husband and I, we bought our first home when I was 27. And my mother, I learned about real estate from my mother. She was a real estate entrepreneur, buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell. And we'd always lived in our own home. So that was one of the things I told my husband when I first met him. I've never lived in an apartment building and I don't intend to do so now. So we have to get a house. And it was always something in the background. Was property. I'm from Jamaica and, from the islands, people are used to having their own property. It could be a shack, but it's theirs.
Yeah, that's so true.
So that was something easy for me to embrace.
Oh. And so when did it become a passion and a business for you?
It became a passion when my husband decided to retire because with our business, we were a florist and landscape. So basically I managed we had a manager in the florist shop, but in the landscape division, I was the admin person. I did the contracts. I did the billing. Because, when you're working for the city, it's a lot of work. If you're going to make money, it's big contracts, big work. So that's what I did. And it wasn't until my husband decided, he wanted to retire, that I said, great, because now this is an opportunity to do what I love, which is to sell real estate. When you have a business, it's a lot of commitment. It's a lot of responsibility. It always makes me laugh when I used to go out and speak to kids in school and they say, we want our own business so we can do what we want to do. They have no idea. When you have a business, you're responsible to your client, to your staff. They tell you what to do, and it's not really you doing what you want to do every day. So once he decided to retire and we decided to sell the business, and I said, you know what, I'm too young to retire, so I'm going to do what I love to do, which is sell real estate. It's weird because when I had the flower shop and I was doing wedding consultations, I would always ask the couple, so where are you living? And they would look at me very strangely and say, why? But it wasn't that I wasn't a real estate agent, that I wasn't trying to sell them anything. It was just that it annoyed me that so many young people spend thousands and thousands of dollars on these fabulous weddings and they're living in an apartment.
Yeah.
So to me, it didn't make sense. So that's always been my passion, to encourage people to increase their wealth through real estate.
Yeah. What's interesting about your business and some of the discussion I'd like to have here today is, Brooklyn now is a hot spot. And so 20, 30 years ago, and even earlier than that, my parents are also immigrants. And so Brooklyn was the place that you came to. It was the place where you could buy a home. You couldn't afford one maybe in Manhattan, but the outer boroughs like Queens, Staten Island, the Bronx, those were the places where you could actually buy a home. Now all of these places have become the hot spots. And it's not just New York City, places like Brooklyn and Queens. We're seeing it in Atlanta and Philadelphia, in Baltimore, all of these like great cities. Is it too late for people to consider buying in these popular cities? DC is another one.
Definitely not. I can only really speak to, I'll speak to Brooklyn primarily because I'm in Brooklyn. I know so much about Brooklyn. Interestingly enough, through the housing boom of the past 2 years, which was due to the COVID-19 pandemic, prices went up all over the country, but they did not go up that fast in New York City, because like I tell my customers, things here have always been expensive.
Right.
It's nothing new to us.
Right.
Things in Brooklyn have always been high. I mean, even when compared to all the other boroughs, the other boroughs have caught up with us. I used to refer people to Queens, Jamaica, when they couldn't afford a house in Brooklyn. Now there, the prices are high also.
Right.
But things in Brooklyn have always been high. And I was just reading an article about 2 weeks ago, and they said that New York City was number 3 on the list from 1 to 20 of one of the best places to invest because prices here have only gone up relatively 3%. Whereas these other places like Florida, Texas, home prices gone up 20, 30, 40%.
Right.
And I think it's crazy because I know the people in those places do not make the kind of salaries that you make in larger cities. So now they're faced with these high, properties being costing so much. Whereas we're in New York, we're used to that. We've always had to spend a lot of money for our living expenses here. So it's nothing new for us. And, properties are always going to go up. They're not making any more land. That's number one. They're not making any more land. So real estate is always going to be a good investment. And there is still opportunities. Listen, Google is my best friend. Google it. You'll find out. There's still opportunities out there.
I know you also talk a lot about the importance of buying because it is the foundation, or some people say the cornerstone for wealth building. And so what do you say to prospective home buyers about the importance of owning a property, not just so that you're not paying rent or not just so that you can have a beautiful home, but as a wealth building tool?
I don't know what to tell folks except to Google it and see the statistics for yourself. What is it? I think 9 out of 10 millionaires are created through real estate. That says it all. I can't imagine. And it's an easy way for ordinary people like you and I to become wealthy. If my husband and I hadn't invested in real estate all these years while we had our business, he wouldn't have been able to retire. People ask, what do you do now? He says, I take care of my properties. He's a property manager. But if we hadn't invested in real estate, maybe we would be able to do that right now. So it's always been something that I think it's easy because you're basically working with other people's money. You put down a small deposit. And if you have tenants, your tenants are basically paying your mortgage. Right? When they pay their rent, they pay your mortgage. So it's a no-brainer. I mean, like as I said, 9 out of 10 people became millionaires from real estate. Nothing has changed since then.
Is there something that you think people miss about real estate? I think there are a lot of people who like to get in it, and there are a lot of folks who talk about, wanting to invest property. I hear a lot of young people saying that they're going to get their real estate license. What advice would you offer people who really either want to start investing? Like, what do they either miss? What do they get wrong? What should they be focusing on as they start that journey?
Sonia, I think what a lot of people miss is taking action. So
you're right.
It's just taking action. Yeah. I have customers, clients, friends, family members that have been looking up for a home for 3 or 4 years. Anything they bought in Brooklyn 3 years ago would be worth $100,000 or more, $100,000 more than now. I think people really have to do a lot of work on themselves, a lot of coaching, so they become more confident. That's what a lot of people are lacking, is confidence, because they're so afraid. And, when you're afraid, you can't be an entrepreneur or a business owner if you're afraid, because you have to take risks. And only those that take risks succeed. Not everything is going to work out, but if you try 10 things, or if you try and purchase 10 properties, sooner or later, you're going to get successful with one of them. But what a lot of people miss is just taking that action, getting coaching and taking the action.
Have you only invested in New York City, or have some of your investments been out of town?
No, we've invested in New York City and also in Puerto Rico. My husband is Puerto Rican, and we go there a couple of times a year. We have family home there. So I also invest in Puerto Rico. I like to invest in places that I like to visit, and places that I know. So that's what's worked for me.
That's
and I know both those places very well, so it works out.
That's very good. Tell us a little bit about EXP. and eXp Realty, which is the company that you're affiliated with.
Yeah, it's interesting. eXp Realty is one of the largest agencies in the States worldwide, and they're growing. And it's a virtual company, it's really interesting. They've been around for about 10 years, but they really took off during COVID-19 because everybody was home. And the idea of working with a virtual company became normal. If you had told people that before, they might have thought twice about it. But now it's all the rage to work from home. So they were right. They would be in the forefront of that. And I just like the company because they are virtual. They have agents all over the world. So I can refer people not only to Puerto Rico, but if you want to buy a house in India, you want to buy a house in London, all over the world. Yeah, I can help you do that. And I also like the independence. Some people like to be in an office, having somebody hold their hands. That's not me. I'm an entrepreneur. So entrepreneurs like to work independently. So the business model of eXp really works out well for me. They're a great company. They offer stock. They're also traded publicly, which is great because, you can buy stock in the company. They have health insurance, a lot of things that a lot of local offices don't offer. So that's why what really prompted me to join them as a real estate agent.
Right.
And also, I didn't really want to have the responsibilities of being with a big team. Like I said, being an entrepreneur, I didn't want to have the responsibility of working in a big team or a huge office. So their business model was really one that fit for me.
Right. And you were fortunate enough to be able to work with your husband in not just one business, but several businesses.
Yes.
So you must really like each other.
That's a whole nother topic.
Okay.
We're going to have to do another podcast for that.
We'll bring you back for couples who work together. Yes, that's always an interesting one.
It's cool. He was basically the field person and I was the office person. So we didn't see each other all day long. I mean, we might have spoken on the phone 50 times, but he was in his space and I was in my space. So that helped. And then now that I'm a real estate agent working from home, it's interesting. It's very interesting working with your spouse. You either become closer or you get divorced.
And you guys are still together over 40 years of marriage. So that's how many? 45 years. So that's a great testament to each of your level of patience and commitment to working with each other. That's great. Wait, so what's next for you? Entrepreneurs, their spirit, like you said, they're always hunting, always looking for the next adventure. Are you interested in pursuing some other things right now?
Yes, I am, but it's all centered around real estate development.
Okay.
So, as I said, that's my passion, and there's so many different ways that you can become involved in real estate. You can become a developer, you can buy and sell, you could flip. Airbnbs are hot now, and in Puerto Rico, that's a great market also. Mm-hmm. So my next venture, I'm not sure what it will be, but it will be definitely centered around the real estate industry.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing. We have to bring you back too, because I found out that you're also a salsa lover, which is that's one of my passions as well. So I'm sure that I've seen you out there.
We have to talk about salsa.
We'll have to reconnect to talk about that. In Brooklyn,
have to talk about where the best salsa is.
Please. I'm always looking for new spots to venture into. So tell folks how they can reach you.
They can reach me at 718-415-9761, 718-415-9761. You can call or text me at any time.
Okay.
And you can also reach me on my website, marciamelendez.exprealty.com.
Okay. And I just remind people that they should be calling or texting you about real estate, not salsa or anything else.
Either one.
Oh, okay, good.
Especially if they know where there's a good spot in Brooklyn.
Okay. Very good. Marcia, thank you for taking time out to hang out with us. And we look forward to hearing more about your next adventures. And I'll keep the audience up to date on where we hang out in terms of the salsa spots that we find. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.
The Business First podcast is hosted and produced by Sonia Aline. Associate producer, Ariel Mancebo. Executive producer, Ken Johnson. Find the Business First podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. And on social at business_first_podcast on IG. The Business First podcast is a Mean Old Line Media production.